Hey, Fabi. Ready for your chess lesson?
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about today is a fantastic new book about an epic rivalry in chess. It's actually about Capablanca and Alekhine. Do you know anything about these players?
Who do you think's better?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a really tough one. Oh my gosh. I think in rankings, a lot of people would say Alekhine, but in terms of my favorite, maybe I would say Capablanca.
Why?
So hard. So hard to say.
Why?
I mean, they were both incredible world champions in terms of their contributions to chess and their level.
Were they 2,700?
They didn't really have 2,700 like rating at that time, but I guess they would be the equivalent of 2,700 rated. Now, in this position, this was the first time they ever faced over the board, and at that time, Capablanca was definitely the stronger player. And right here, he had a mate in 2. Can you find the mate in 2?
Did he see it?
He did indeed. He's playing white.
So Capablanca's better.
Well, Capablanca was known as potentially the most talented player of all time. He was so gifted at chess that he was able to just grasp the truth of a position, sometimes without even really studying or putting as much work as his opponents. So
That's bad.
it eventually led to his downfall in one particular match. Spoiler alert! But it served him well for a long time, and he's still a great chess legend. He was from Cuba, actually. So the Cuban world champion in this position against Alekhine, who was born in Russia, white to move and win. White to move and mate in 2. I guess white is winning in a number of ways, right? That's not it, because we don't have a check. In order to find a checkmate in 2, you need to find a move that threatens check. Can you find a move that threatens a check, and then you can find the right move?
Threatens 2 check. Maybe here.
Aha! And what's the mate that you're threatening?
It threatens.
So I suppose I go here or something. How do you have checkmate? Now you need checkmate in 1 move.
Checkmate!
Yeah, kind of a nice checkmate with an I8.
I don't think it's that nice. I think it's cool.
It's very cool, right? It's a cool checkmate. Moving the knight backwards is hard for some people to see, especially if you're trying to go backwards to aggress. They call those invisible chess moves. Knight g6, on the other hand, might come to mind more quickly, but that move's not quite as strong. Even though it threatens mate in 1, king g4 and the king escapes. So that was their first ever battle. And actually, at the time, they were friends, but they ended up becoming enemies. So
Wow.
Capablanca and Alekhine actually disliked each other so much that they didn't greet each other, shake hands. In fact, if Capablanca wanted to offer a draw to Alekhine, he would do so through an intermediary, like an arbiter or a friend, because they were on such bad terms.
But what do you mean an arbiter?
Like, instead of offering a draw to Alekhine, like, he would offer it through somebody else because they were on such horrible terms. I learned this all from this book, actually.
Why did they used to be friends and now they're not?
Well, that's a long story that is told really well in the book, but basically the short version is that in 1927 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, they had their first world championship match, and the rules were that Capablanca or Alekhine would have to win 6 games in order to get the world championship title. And Capablanca himself had actually written the rules as world champion for his challenger. And then when he lost the match, Alekhine wanted to stay world champion for a really long time. So despite Capablanca's ardent attempts to get a rematch, he was unsuccessful in that. And that caused a lot of animosity between the 2 players. Because Alekhine would rather play easier people.
Capablanca was never...
He never got to become world champion again, or even to challenge for the title.
Why?
Because Alekhine played against other players instead. He even lost the championship at some point before regaining it. And then also World War II caused a lot of issues. It was very difficult to travel. That also contributed to the difficulty. But that was basically the reason. And not only did they not have another world championship match, but Alekhine didn't even want to play him in a regular tournament. So if Capablanca was going to play, Alekhine said that my fee is higher than normal because he didn't want to play in the same tournament. So yeah, pretty wild. They became enemies. So the next position I'm about to show you was from a very dramatic event in Alekhine's life and in the chess world. So Alekhine was playing in a chess tournament in Germany in 1914, and the tournament did not conclude because World War I broke out. Let me quote from the book. On August 1st, the tournament was suspended after Germany officially declared war on Russia. 11 of the 17 scheduled rounds had already been played, so the organizers paid out a proportional share of the prizes to the top scorers. The Russian players were detained. That included Alekhine. There was no worse place for a Russian chess player to be at that time than that tournament.
Why?
Because they were detained. And in fact, that's the game that I'm about to show you. When Alekhine was detained, he played blindfold chess in prison with another chess player. And this is the game that we're going to look at right now. So he's white in this position, playing blindfold. Alekhine was really good at blindfold chess. Why was he playing blindfold in the prison, Fabian?
Because they didn't have any chessboards.
Exactly. They didn't have any chessboards. And by the way, a lot of people say that in prison, one of the worst things is boredom. So stories of chess players playing blindfold in order to stave off boredom and mark the time is an extremely common story. And this is one of many.
Wait, so did he get away? How did he get out of jail? Did he escape?
No, he didn't escape. Eventually, they let them go. I think there was some suspicion that they were spies. The book goes into some detail about it. So anyone who's interested in more info on that can get the book. But he was eventually freed and went back to Russia for a short time. So imagine this. He's in prison playing blindfold chess and still plays a really spectacular game here. White to move and...
Queen here.
Well, queen f8 is just going to be a big trade, isn't it? Because rook takes f8, queen f8, bishop f8. It's going to be equal material. And actually, I could play pawn takes c3 at the end of the
So maybe
variation.
if I take the rook first.
Well, same deal, right? Queen e8, rook f8, queen takes f8, bishop f8, pawn takes c3, check. It's still, isn't it still the same material? 2 bishops and a rook versus 2 bishops and a rook? There's something else. Remember in chess, when one move order doesn't work, maybe you can reverse the move order. And while this pattern is not as common as the patterns you're going to see on Puzzle Rush, it is something that happens quite a lot. So bringing another piece into the attack. That's a really good idea, honestly, but that is not what Alekhine played. Rook e1 is actually a pretty good idea because I see you're trying to remove the defender here. But the problem is that if rook e1, if I play rook takes e1, or maybe I throw in pawn takes c3 check, king h1, rook e1, queen f8 is not winning because after queen takes f8, you can't take with the rook because it's pinned, right?
And then it's actually losing.
Maybe, I mean, you probably have to take the rook back. Well, yeah, queen f8 would be losing, absolutely. So that is a good idea, and it could be one of the moves that I would look at too. But Alekhine found something better.
No.
Another way to get a piece into the game.
Mr. Alekhine. Maybe bishop here.
Ooh, I like that. That actually threatens checkmate. I like to call it mate threats a zap. And it actually threatens 2 checkmate. Bishop takes g7 check and queen takes g7. And now if rook f8, queen f8, queen f8, rook f8 is mate, right? Very nice. But there is a little bit more to it. He didn't just win right away. After bishop to f8, exclam, nice move. Bogoloboyev played b takes c3 check here just to throw in that check. But let me just double check. Yeah, he did play d takes c3 check, discovering an attack on the king. And now after king to h1, bishop d4, stopping the checkmate on this square. And now, remember, Alekhine's still blindfold here in a prison cell. What did he play now? Yeah, there it is. d6. It's actually another zap, right? Because now you're threatening queen g8 mate. So the only move that black could find to stop it would be bishop to e6. But now bishop takes e6. And now rook takes f8 because now we're connecting with this rook. And now, what did Alekhine do to finish off the game?
Mr. Alekhine.
He found a nice little intermezzo here.
Intermezzo.
Ooh, okay. In between move. And now if I play rook takes queen, what do you do?
I mean here.
Yeah, you do the intermezzo. And then after rook takes f7, what's the material count?
White's upper rook.
Right would be upper rook. Now, of course, in this position, Black could play something like queen d6.
That's bad.
But now there's a number of things I think you can do here, such as
here.
this one might lead to. Oh, you're right. This one works. Yeah, because I'll be up a rook at the end. Okay, so after d takes c7, if queen d6 now, queen f8, rook f8, rook f8, queen f8, and white will be up an entire rook. So black resigned, and Alekhine did manage. He didn't.
Wait, they resigned, but I thought they were enemies.
Oh, this was actually not against Capablanca, but he did sometimes resign to Alekhine despite them being enemies. They did still resign against each other, as was the custom. This was against a. Remember, this was a blindfold game in prison.
Were they like so mad, but sometimes they like throw like a rock?
No, they just didn't greet each other. You know the custom when you play a chess tournament is to say good luck, right, Fabi?
Yeah,
give me your hand.
do that.
Shall we? So they didn't do that. This game is from their 1927 Buenos Aires match. That's in Argentina, where they played their only match. And it lasted so long because basically the rules were that you had to win 6 games to win the match, but the draws didn't count. So every time they had a draw, the match just got longer and longer, which made it really difficult for the organizers to figure out how long the match was going to be. Anyway, this was game 11, and it's one of my favorites.
Game 11? There were more than 6 games. I felt like there would be no draws.
No, there were a ton of draws. And in fact, Capablanca actually realized that there might be too many draws to host matches like that. But because he came up with the rules, it was hard for him then to say that his own rules were bad. So a big mess, which actually ended up kind of echoing through all chess history, as many players have tried to figure out what to do about the fact that there are so many draws in chess. Magnus Carlsen has had a lot of great ideas about that. But let's take a look at this position. It's one of my favorites from the match.
Did someone win in this position?
Yeah, someone did. And you'll see why it's one of my favorites. You can see that Alekhine's pawn is very far advanced.
Like who won?
But you might be able to have a guess. Okay. Yeah. So black's pawn is promoting, and white is trying to get counterplay over here. Now, in this position, Alekhine actually said that he missed a move a couple of moves earlier. But what I bet I would have missed if I were black in this position, or if I was white in this position, was black's next move here. Because all the normal looking moves for black aren't that impressive. Like if you try to trade queens, just queen takes f5, pawn takes f5, rook e1, and I'm going to stop the pawn, and I've got some counterplay of my own. Meanwhile, as they say, all rook endgames are drawn, so that is an exaggeration, but it should be a little bit easier to draw that than the queen and rook endgame. Meanwhile, if we were to just check, it would be a perpetual, right?
And that's a good thing.
And we can't take this pawn off because the queen takes c8. So instead, the move here that black played is kind of obvious to some people, but it's also very sneaky. So black played this sneaky and very kind of counterintuitive move, rook f8. Because we're moving our rook away from the pawn, the protection of the pawn, and we're moving it away from the open file. And it's a very passive looking move. But it protects the king. And now rook e8's not a check, and we can just take this pawn off, queen takes f6, and we're winning. Skipping ahead to this position, black now played a nice move as both players aim to race their pawns ahead. Alekhine played queen to f1, given a double X scam in this book because of the threat of rook to d2. And queen c3, the rook is hanging. So after queen e4, rook d2, rook takes d2, c takes d2, we have a very unusual situation that came up where both sides have 2 queens, right? That is extremely rare. Maybe it happens a little bit at like the kindergarten or first grade level, but after that, you really don't see it very often at all. So,
but what about here? Here doesn't even work because both of the queens.
Exactly. So what can black do here? Now, very many times when it's a question of 4 queens, the person who checks first wins. But actually in this position, the king is very safe. White's king, not so safe. And also, the side that gets to start checking first usually wins as well. Alekhine, being black here, has the move and has the safer king, so he did indeed win. He actually has mate in 3 here. Let's see if he can find it.
Here.
Starting with queen g1 check, excellent. And then after king to h3, what happens? Made in 2 now.
Here.
Well, queen to d. Let's try to do the end in our head.
Queen G2. Here.
Yes, very nice. Taking advantage of the pin. Queen df1, queen g2, queen h1 is a lovely little checkmate. And
But whether the queen takes, they can, and the queen can't take the queen because
exactly.
it's checkmate.
Actually, these types of pins come up a lot in these endgames, and I have an article about it on my Substack as well that I'll link to in the show notes. 4 queen positions, very rare. Especially rare to see it in a world championship match. Alekhine did end up winning the match, and they never got to play another match. They did face each other on the board because the problem was that Capablanca had created these rules called the London rules, and it made it difficult to challenge for a match. Meanwhile, the World Wars and Alekhine's desire to play weaker opponents just created a destiny in which they never faced in another match.
But they were big enemies.
Well, that was part of the reason they were enemies, because Capablanca was mad that Alekhine wouldn't give him a rematch. And, well, Alekhine was just mad because I guess he didn't like Capablanca that much. That side of it, maybe he wasn't happy with his tone as he kept asking for these rematches. Capablanca unfortunately died relatively young at the age of 53 at a New York chess club. So Alekhine had a very sad chapter to the end of his life too, in that in World War II, I told you earlier that he was actually in prison in Germany. Well, things flipped in World War II when he actually played in a number of Nazi-sponsored tournaments and even wrote an article about the natural inferiority of Jewish chess players. And then later...
He's evil!
Well, that is definitely a bad thing to do. When the war was ending, he claimed that he hadn't written the article, that somebody forced him to put his name to it. So that was a question that hasn't been definitively answered, although historians certainly do have their own opinions on that, and I'll link to some of those in the show notes. And he died actually when he was in Spain. Never got to play another
Why did he die in Spain?
He was actually in a hotel room studying chess. He was playing in a series of exhibitions in Spain and trying to get kind of accepted back into the chess world, because there were some people who didn't want him to continue to play on the circuit because they were angry about the Nazi collaborations. And then there were some people who believed Alekhine's story that it wasn't really his word and he was forced to align. So that was kind of a question going on in the chess world. But then he died under mysterious circumstances, so the question kind of ended to some extent. But that's the story of Alekhine and Capablanca.
Do you think they should have let him in, or do you think they should have not have let him in?
I mean, that's a great question. That's a really good question. I mean, I guess the article was so horrifying to me that he was using his position in a way as world champion to, propagate one of the biggest evils of our time, which is like racism and eugenics. So I would probably be on the no side, but I should point out that an actual hero of World War II, Tartakower, who's one of my favorite players, disagreed and said that he thought that Alekhine should be welcomed back into the chess world, and that because he was an intelligence officer and a hero of World War II, that his opinion counted more than others. So it was kind of a hotly debated issue. What do you think, Fabian? Should he have been let back into the chess world? Okay, well, I think that's a very valid opinion.
Was he not allowed to play any tournaments?
That was the question. Some people didn't want him to play tournaments, like others thought he should because he was maybe the best player, one of the best players. He died, so the question became moot, as we say. But I did want to mention quickly these books that I have here, because one of them is about a female chess player who actually survived a Holocaust, and I got her to sign my copy of this book called Stolen Youth. Her name was Isabelle Choco, and she became French women's chess champion. So a very storied rivalry between Capablanca and Alekhine. And one of the things I like about this book is so much great chess. Really good analysis that's not too advanced and explains in words what was going on. And I also like how it's a great reminder how you can learn a lot about history from chess, because you really see both world wars and, the basics of what happened and how they affected every industry, including something that seems like it might be
separate. Which one's Capablanca and which one's Alekhine?
That one's Alekhine and that one's Capablanca. Capablanca, for what it's worth, was also known to be incredibly good-looking and suave and a really fun-loving guy. And also, he was known for his talent. Like, he supposedly didn't work that hard.
Was he nice?
I think a lot of people really liked him, yes.
Nice.
Alekhine, on the other hand, was known as a very hard worker. So they kind of had these different images in that way. But I will tell you that a lot of people say they don't work hard, but really they do. It's kind of like Magnus. You know, Magnus says he only works 4 hours a day on the board, but then he's thinking about chess all day. And my guess is that was similar with Capablanca. So maybe he didn't actually study chess with a board and pieces and notes, but he was thinking about all the time.
And this is Dogman. It's super funny, and I like it.
It's okay. Funny is good too.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to reading my Dogman book.
That's fair. High five. Don't leave me hanging.
Meanwhile, I have...
So study chess, study history.
And study Dogman!
See you next time.